everyone, this is Spoon Dude back with another custom action figure showcase. This time we'll finally be taking a look at my custom MAFEX Spider-Man No Way Home final/classic suit, Spider-Man. Spider-Man No Way Home was my absolute favorite film last year. Watching it opening night was truly a great cinematic experience. Even outside from the nostalgia of returning characters from previous movies, I thought the movie was just a really good story for Tom Holland's version of the character that allowed him to evolve and mature into a more burdened Spider-Man, one that really had to prove he learned the iconic lesson of great power and responsibility. With the sacrifice the character makes at the end, he loses his friends and allies, including those he used to rely on at Stark Industries, and thus the final scene of the movie reveals Peter has fashioned himself a new suit, made with some red and blue fabric and a sewing machine. This is the iconic version of the Spider-Man suit, almost ripped straight out from the classic comic books, and is essentially the be-all end-all version of the suit that signals he has grown into the Spider-Man we all know and love. As a massive fan of Spider-Man, I just had to have an action figure of this design. Initially, I was just happy to use a kit bash of a comic Spider-Man figure and an MCU head to satisfy my need, but as soon as it became clear to me that we wouldn't get any official figures of this specific suit for a long while, I decided to pull the trigger on doing a full-on custom. I took inspiration from Toys Yamakoa's custom on Instagram, though the figure recipe I used isn't exactly the same. If you're interested in seeing the specific details of my process in making this custom, from all the kit bashing and painting and sculpting and prep work and all that, check out the 3-part video series I did showing the whole process of me making this custom. Though I decided to use MAFEX Spider-Man parts, as MAFEX makes my favorite Spider-Man figures, and it just so happened I had the right spare parts. The Far From Home Spider-Man makes up the majority of the figure, with arms from the Homecoming Spider-Man, wrist joints from an Amazing Spider-Man, and the hands I used are from a Spider-Verse Peter B. Parker. I used the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse hands because they are the closest to the bright red that I used to paint the rest of the figure. They're already cast in that color, so I didn't have to end up painting all sets of hands for this figure. I can just use the spare hands I have from the Spider-Verse one, and it works out quite well. I'm happy with this body choice, as I think his proportions best match Tom Holland. He's not comic book muscular, but not stick skinny either. I also really like his short stature that lets him fit nicely with other 6-inch figures and look his age. The Far From Home figure base also has the right textures for the blue portions of the suit, so that worked out quite well. Speaking of textures though, because I had to resculpt a lot of the red portions of the figure, the dotted texture that should be the red fabric is just kind of missing on the arms and a little bit on the belt. Somehow this doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would. I think it's because the red texture is relatively subtle on the figure, and on the arms the texture ended up becoming quite faint from how I prepped them. You are able to still see which sections I sculpted myself once you get up close and personal. There's kind of a roughness there that definitely could have been ironed out if I had put a little bit more time and care to this custom. I will be honest, I didn't have a lot of time working on this project, not a lot of free time for customizing. You could probably tell that from my upload schedule. So any off time I did have that I spent on this custom, I really tried to maximize how much progress I could make, sculpt as much as I could, paint as much as I could. So in that process, I didn't really have the patience to smooth things out as much as I really should have. The logos aren't perfectly sculpted, their size is a little bit off, and the general shape isn't quite right. Like always, my sculpt work isn't exactly symmetrical, but I think I was able to get the details relatively crisp looking on their own, that I'm happy with how it looks from my ability, and I'm happy the logos are at least flat on the figure and not kind of too thick or too bulging out. I'm super happy with the colors of this custom. I think the bright red and shimmery metallic blue did pay off quite nicely. The red could be a little bit more evenly applied. I'll talk about that in my making of series. But I think from afar, if you don't know how I kind of screwed up in painting it, it's not too noticeable. I'm happy with the way I applied the webs on the figure by drawing them on instead of using like a black wash to fill in the sculpted lines. I was able to achieve a cleaner look, and you can see that compared to the official MAFEX Spider-Man figures, where they do have a black wash to paint the legs, and it comes across a little bit more inconsistent than I think it does with my approach. Compared to my Ultimate Spider-Man custom, which is a comparison I wanted to make sure to include in this video, I did use the same metallic blue on both figures, but you can see how much more vibrant the red is on my No Way Home figure. And even the blue itself seems darker on the Ultimate Spider-Man, and that's probably because of the black wash I used on that figure. And you can see the effect that has here, where it lends it a grittier, darker look, which I thought was appropriate for the comic book figure, especially the kind of 2000s Ultimate Spider-Man comic. But the No Way Home movie figure really needed to have a much cleaner look, so that's why I didn't do a black wash for the webs. Speaking about paint though, and me screwing up, there is a teeny bit of paint rub here and there. Some of it's inevitable from the kind of posing I keep doing, but other points didn't have to have paint rub, if I'm being honest. If I just put in the time to do the joint prep, there would probably be a lot less paint rub. But once again, this is me rushing in, not having as much time as I wanted, and just generally being over eager to finish comes in. For anyone who's asked if I do commissions or make custom figures for other people, this is one of the reasons I don't. My customs always end up having some kind of paint rub, which is often fine for the purposes of my personal collection. Like, I'm the one putting in the time, so if I'm kind of too lazy to remove paint rub perfectly, then I can kind of just accept that I didn't put that effort and just be fine with it. But if I'm making customs and selling it for other collectors, I don't really think this would be acceptable, and that's the reason I don't really sell my work. Who knows, maybe I'll be able to iron out my skills a little bit better, have more patience in doing the joint prep and being able to reduce paint rub, and maybe then I would be entertaining the idea of selling my customs. But on this figure, the paint rub's not too overly rampant. I can still pose them in dynamic poses without worrying about like 96% of the paint coming off. I made an effort to improve the articulation of this figure, as the original MAFEX figure had certain limitations. You can see the big difference as I compare this custom's range of motion to the Far From Home figure. So even though there is a little bit of paint rub, this is still a figure that I want to be able to pose and get into all those iconic Spider-Man poses, and I think it does that pretty decently. And with that, you've seen my custom Spider-Man No Way Home figure. I'm very proud of it, despite the mistakes and flaws that I made with it and made sure to point out in this video. I'm still hoping for an official figure of the suit sooner or later, preferably from MAFEX, but I would probably buy one from SH Figure Arts and even Marvel Legends. I just like this design that much, honestly. However, there's no telling when or even if we're getting those figures, so for the time being, I'm very happy to have my custom to fill that end of No Way Home suit Spider-Man shaped hole for me. There's a sentence. Let me know your thoughts on the custom in the comments below. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and like seeing more of this custom. If you haven't already, check out the making of video series I made about how I kit bashed, prepped, sculpted, and painted this thing. Anyways, thanks for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I'll see you in my next video, whatever that is.